Hello and welcome to another episode of Absent with Our Lord podcast, everything faith, family, and outdoors. Join us on all social media platforms and share with friends and family. We hope you are encouraged and uplifted by our content as we share the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Okay, guys, this is Jonathan. I'm here with Team AWOL. We're bringing you another podcast, and we have Mark and Matt here from Integrity Roofing, and we're going to talk all things outdoors. We're going to talk small business, and then also some Christian attributes and ManUp. It will probably get talked about on this topic and on this episode. If you guys good, Matt, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Matt Johnson, originally from Owensboro, Kentucky. Met my wife at Murray State, and she happens to be a lifelong Marionite. So when she was on the 3-year plan and I was on the 6-year plan, and she was like, "Let's go back. I'm ready to get started teaching." And she's a teacher here in Marion, has been for, she'd kill me, 25 years. So
what grade she teach?
First grade over at Washington. So
that's great.
But yeah, got 2 boys we're about empty nesters. Got one that's 21 and one that's 25, lives up in O'Fallon already, married. And so we're kind of in that phase where we're went on a vacation for the first time by ourselves this year. So
excellent. That sounds fantastic. I still got a long way from there. I got 4. So how about yourself, Mark? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Mark Mohler. Matt and I kind of lived the same life, both from Kentucky, both met our wives at Murray State. Our wives are both educators. A little different story, though. I actually went to high school with my wife, but we didn't know each other in high school. Didn't meet until we got to college. So we got to college at Murray State. My mom worked at Murray State, so my Shauna was a student worker, my mom's office. So that's how we met. I quote unquote went to see my mom a lot one semester, just dropping in to see if she needed anything from the grocery store or just to say hi, because I walked past Shauna's desk to get to hers. And so anyway, Shauna kind of figured it out, and I worked up the nerve to ask her out and went out, and here we are 26 years later. 2 kids, 18-year-old son who's graduating high school this year, and 16-year-old daughter who is graduating in a couple years.
Excellent. I'm kind of in the same boat. I have a 17-year-old graduating, one that just got his permit, and then I have 2 little still, both in grade school, 2nd grader and a 4th grader. So, yeah, I kind of started all over again after a few years. About 10 years, we decided to have 2 more kids. So that's the story of myself. And tell us a little bit what got you guys into Integrity Roofing.
Yeah, so I kind of laugh and say this. I interviewed with Integrity because it was a better job than I had.
Right.
And I had no idea what I was getting myself into in a good way. We say that a lot of times. Well, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Entered into a culture, man, unlike I have ever been part of. We are as much a family as we are co-workers. Pretty large company, but we literally do life together. So my role in the company is a project consultant. So consult on residential, commercial projects, oversee the projects. But I get to be in the guys' lives. Get to speak truth into their life, just beyond roofing. I train all the new guys that come into Illinois, and a lot of the new guys that come into our Kentucky market as well. But just get to spend a lot of time with them. So what I tell people is putting on roofs pays the bills, being part of their lives, speaking truth into their lives, helping them through tough times, celebrating when their kids are born. That's what gets me out of bed.
Right.
So that's a unique place. Matt is there as well. So
yeah, me coming to Integrity started years and years ago, and like it seems everything leads back to baseball for me. Like I said, before we started, I was telling you I coached baseball around here for years, and I was coaching in Marion with a gentleman named Kevin Turnage 16 years ago, and his son is one of the managers at Integrity and has been there 12 years. Well, he was our 15-year-old helper when I was coaching baseball. And as I told you, I worked at Lowe's for 17 years, and the last 3 years I worked in commercial sales. Well, Dylan would come in to buy stuff for the roofing company every other day, and he'd walk in and he'd be like, Matt, you really need to come join us. You need to be with us. You need to come join us. And finally, I got tired of the big corporate thing, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. And I called Dylan, and I called one of the other guys that worked at Integrity, and I asked them both what it was like, and they were like, well, all we can tell you is it's like family. And they wouldn't go in any deeper detail. I think they wanted me to see for myself, but so I was just at that point where I wanted to give it a shot. So, excellent. And then, as Mark says, it's just a different culture. I don't even know where to begin on what a different culture it is from any workplace I've ever been. When we interview, typically we just let people know up front what our culture's like.
Yeah, so you tell them, hey, this is a God-centered environment, and
yeah, so a lot of times as far as consultants go, a lot of times I'm actually the first person they meet in person. When you apply for Integrity, you apply online, then you do a phone interview, and then if the phone interview goes well, you do a ride along. So the ride along is you ride with someone who's doing the job that you apply for. So if there's consultants, a lot of times they're with me for a day. So a lot of times I'm the first person that's actually met them in person. And we begin, if you're riding with me, we begin talking about culture, and explain, this is our culture. Like, is this a culture you can be part of? So not necessarily, are you a believer? What's your doctrinal statement?
Yeah.
Give me all the things you believe, and where do you go to church, and what, how much did you give last year? None of that, but we introduce them to our culture. And at the end of that day, I always ask them, is this a job and a culture you can see yourself spending a lot of years in? And then from there on. So everybody has a different path, and everybody brings their own personality in. So like Matt said, it's not necessarily a prerequisite. But I tell you what we have seen too. We have seen guys that would say on paper they're a Christian before they come to our company. But then once they get there, recognize, I was a Christian, but now that I'm around you guys, I'm recognizing that there's a lot more to it than just going to church on Sunday.
Yeah, that's exciting for Southern Illinois, and I see that more and more, even with our small suppliers that we work with. That they may, we have a couple small suppliers in Kentucky that I work directly with, and it's something about a different level of standard and expectation when you go, and they're a bigger, supplier to us. It's a bigger company, and their vice president will take you to lunch, and it doesn't matter who went to lunch. Like, you're praying before the meal. Like, it's just different. It's needed. And I've noticed, through the last couple of years, that more people are leaving the corporate scene and wanting that family atmosphere for longevity in a career.
I think it's important, and that's why, I'm just sitting back here. Maybe I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but when questions get asked, sometimes you got to tiptoe around them or take the long way around. Like, my words that I thought was, well, we don't want to discriminate or anything like that. That's a terrible, shameful word. Of course we're not discriminating by having Christian values, but our values can always be our values wherever we're at. If I am a God-fearing man and I want to pray before I eat dinner, by all means, how does that affect anybody else? And I know who she's talking about. I've been to lunch with them before, and It's great. To me, that's great. That's what we need. We need more people that are not ashamed to stand up and say, I'm firm in my beliefs. I'm firm in, again, different doctrines, different names on doors, but most people that are Christian believe Jesus Christ our Savior, right? That doesn't change whatever denomination is or moniker, but, and I love that. And I like, I'm sitting here thinking about integrity roofing. It sounds very fitting the way you guys are describing the culture, for sure, because that's what I think of as integrity. So how many locations is Integrity at?
We've got technically 3 areas, but a couple more locations. We have our main office is in Stone Fort, and we have an office that is technically our Home Renew office in Marion, and then we have an office in Paducah and Clarksville, Tennessee as well.
Okay.
We're starting to branch out.
How many employees do you guys think you?
Between 35 and 40 full-time employees.
Excellent.
But yeah, like Mark was saying back on our interview process, it's something different than I've ever been involved with. I applied for the job, and Terry called me, and my phone interview lasted for 2 hours. And then after a 2-hour phone interview, I got called in. If the phone interview goes all right, you get called in for a personal interview at the main office. And I went in for the main interview, and that lasted for another 2 hours. And then if your third interview goes good, you most likely get invited out to eat with the owner and his wife, and maybe they usually have the spouse or significant other come along, and they almost get interviewed. So, and then at that point is when you would maybe get an offer. Wow. But that's how. But almost all our sales consultants are in a BNI. I don't know if you guys are familiar with BNIs, but they're business referral groups that are in almost every town around here. And it was funny because when I joined that, you have to have one-on-one meetings with other people, other business people within your group. And I started telling them when I first started, I was like, well, Terry has us read 15 books in our first 90 days. So that to get that's a big culture shock for a lot of people. And then they were like, well, what'd you read? Well, the first book in my class, the first group of guys that I came through with, we read the 5 love languages. So we're a roofing company, and we start out reading the 5 love languages, and these people are looking at me like, what?
All right, I got to jump in. I got to ask, does he give you these titles to read?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Well, that's the first response. It was a local insurance lady that I was having my first one-to-one meeting with, and she's like, I want my company to do that. She was like, that's wild. And I was like, and then they gave at the Christmas party, or year-end party, we call it, they gave our spouses the book and told us, they should read through it and go through it with us.
So do you think that's building of just a personal discipline, just for build everyone's character individually?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, and part of it is, like you say, the individual character, but bringing you into the culture and letting you know in very humble but very definitive ways, like, this is who we are.
That's amazing.
And preparing people for success. I think that's so key.
That is amazing. Do you have people that'll say like, no, I'm not going to do that?
Well, they don't stay very long.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he's ever had anybody turn it down, but
no, I don't know of anybody that never read
book
the books.
reports due at the end of it?
No, there's well, not official reports, but
maybe
ask you enough
Q&A.
questions to know that you did it.
Yeah.
Well, we would discuss the books at our sales meeting every week, so you're again going to discuss that book at a sales meeting, which is different than any other place I would ever be. So
there you go, Jonathan. Those are things that you can implement at your new company.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm all, well, again, just to get into the character, the love languages, how does that help us? That helps us understand people. It helps us understand what motivates and drives certain characters that you may not be familiar with. I love it. I'm like intrigued. I could ask a whole lot more questions. But there's a lot of topics to talk about. So.
Well, I think one thing we have to understand in this realm, and definitely as Christians, this whole mindset of, I'm at work, I'm at home, I leave home at home. I leave work at work. While that might sound good, that's never reality. You know, if we have a great morning at home with our spouse, most of the time we're going to have a better day. I rarely, and my wife's going to listen to this just because I'm on here, so you need to hear me say, I rarely have a bad morning, and when I do, it's normally, if not always, my fault.
Right.
But
I heard that.
yeah, exactly.
Took notes actually.
But I mean, you know, all jokes aside, if we start off the day at home bad, rarely do we have a great day.
Right.
And if our home life is struggling, our work life is going to be struggling. But it's more than just investing in our employees so we get more out of them at work. We have to care enough about them that we care about what life's like at home.
Right.
We have to care enough about them that we have to care about how are you handling stress? How are you growing as an individual? Because we care about them as an individual. They're not just a means for us to grow our own company or just a means for us to line our own pockets. They are people made in God's image. And as followers of Christ, we have to care about them the way Christ would, without thinking about how am I going to personally benefit from this.
It's very good. I was just thinking, I mean, Jonathan left his previous company over 20 something years, and just to think of the amount of lives that he ministered to or gave his testimony to, the hole that he has left in an entire manufacturing facility it's just known, right? I feel like it's just one less godly man in my life at work that I know that's on my side or on our team member side that actually care. Which there's great people at work, but just to know over the years, you guys, I'm sure the way it sounds, you're impacting generations of people over time. And it's when you have somebody like me, you'll run into people with fathers being passed away or not good godly figures, and then they have this job, they look up to people. That's generational changing impacts of people's careers, and I think it's amazing, and it's really positive for our community. And I wanted to go into the ManUp Adventure Camp. Am I saying that right? That's right. So I know you guys are doing a really good job putting that on social media, because I've already actually had people ask us if we were a part of that, being a part of Team AWOL. And we've done a pretty good job over the last 3 years to get out in the community, doing community connect events, going to hunting and fishing days, John A. Logan, getting, Team AWOL out there. It's cool that they see us as something similar as a, faith-based outdoors thing. But I want you guys to how did ManUp start, and what's the vision for it in the future?
I'll let you start with the beginning and tell you how it got started, and then I can fill in the background on the property and maybe some of the other stuff. Yeah,
so ManUp got started with a text. Terry has bought a property, now it as Legacy Farm, and it's a wedding venue, event venue. It's a farm on the edge of Pope County. And so from the time that he bought it, we were thinking about, okay, how can we use this? Like, how can, not just to be a wedding venue, but how can we see God move here? Terry was, thinking that direction. And so one of the roles that I have in our church is I am security 2 Sundays a month for the children's department, the lower age of children's department, which means I stand at the door and make sure none of the kids run out and make sure no one that's not supposed to be in there gets in there. That's my job. So I'm a children's volunteer that does not work or is gifted with children, but I'm big enough to stand at the door. So that's what I do. Well, that means that for the biggest part of the time, I'm sitting in a chair watching an empty lobby. And so it's fun to sit and look at an empty lobby for only so long. I have been an outdoorsman all my life. I grew up in Kentucky. I grew up on a farm. We had, over 100 acres of just woods. And so I spent my childhood roaming those woods, squirrel hunting when I was a little boy. That's just where I spent my time. Fell in love with camping, fell in love with backpacking, fell in love with being in the outdoors, fishing, hunting, all of that. So I'm just sitting in this chair one Sunday morning, and I'm thinking, man, is there anywhere like around here, around our area, that has an outdoor ministry for campers, and there's not a lot that I found, but I stumbled on this thing called a church that does a camp in Ohio. They've been putting this camp on for 14 years now, I think, 14 or 15 years. And it's a massive camp out. I mean, just tent camping, backpacking in for a couple miles, tent camping. And the last year, I think they had 1,800. They have 1,800?
2,700.
2,700. The last year that they put it on was 2,700. So I'm just looking at this thinking, this is super cool. So I just shot a text to Terry. I was just like, hey, this looks kind of cool. What do you think? Maybe we could do something like this. And 10 minutes later, I get a text back. Okay, well, that sounds great. I'm going to send you and a couple of guys over there. You explore it and see what you think. And so 10 minutes, later, I'm booking a trip to Ohio to go to this camp. No idea what I'm getting myself into, but Terry thought it looked cool, so we rolled with it. I went over there. Matt was one of the guys that went with me. So I'll let Matt tell you about his experience in just a second. Matt was one of the guys that went. I went, a guy from our Kentucky market went, a guy from our Tennessee market went, another guy from our Illinois market went, and just had an amazing experience with the Lord. We really were kind of just going on a recon mission, just doing some research, but God moved in a powerful way in our hearts. And we came back. So Matt, you jump in and tell us your part of that story, and then we'll get to how we got to ManUp.
Well, my first part of the story is Terry sends out a text. He immediately, I guess, figured out who he wanted to send. I don't know how, but he sends out a group text, and says, hey, you going to this primitive camping thing? Yeah, I don't even think he said that.
No. You were very surprised when you found out.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was, actually. He said, I'm going to send 5 of you guys up to Cincinnati for this long weekend, and I think I might have been sitting in church, and I shouldn't have been looking at my phone.
Yeah, it kind of leads me back to why he texted me so quick.
I look at the phone, and it says, I need to know who's in, and I was just like, I'm in. I don't even know what it is. I'm in. And then I get home, and I look it up, and they're like, 2,000 men standing in mud, waist deep on a weekend in the snow. And I'm like, what did I just sign up for? But that's how I got into it, not even knowing what I was getting into, because as much as I do love the outdoors and have similar story to my dad, owned a logging company for a short period of time, 3 or 4 years of my junior high age, basically down like 5th through 8th grade. And he'd turn me loose in the woods for, hours. It'd be like, yell at me when the work day's done. They're done logging. They'd yell for me off in the woods somewhere. So I like it, but I'm not a camper like him. One other time in my life that I camped out, I didn't have any of the camping gear or any of that. So I had to buy all new gear, which is all right. I like it now. But we went up to this camp, and like I said, you hike in and you pick out your campground, and the way they've got it set up is you may know everybody in your group, you may know nobody in your group. So you set up you grab a fire ring, set up a camp, and then it almost you almost get into what is a small group atmosphere. If you have small groups or church or familiar with something like that, that's kind of what your camp turns into over a 3-day period. And again, we didn't have any idea how it was going to go, but
So it's kind of like church camp for adult men, kind of.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah,
I mean,
like
what's
that.
the activity? I mean, obviously it's structured.
It's the same thing, because if you ever take teenage boys to church camp, they don't shower the whole time they're there either. So, it's
Right on.
Kind of the same. Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Well, so I jokingly said, because Mark and I are part of a bigger group of men at Cornerstone, and when we were trying to recruit them to join us for our first ever ManUp Adventure Camp, I said technically it should be like almost like a vulnerability camp for men, but I was like, that doesn't sell well, so most like we're going to call it an adventure camp. I'm not going to invite you to sit around and
Yeah.
So
we surprise them with vulnerability.
Yeah.
But it's amazing when you allow men the opportunity to remove themselves in a very healthy way. Men remove themselves in a very unhealthy way from stress, through screen addictions, through alcohol, through gambling, through whatever thing they happen to struggle with. They remove themselves from stress that way. But when you give a man a very healthy way to remove himself from stress, to decompress for just a little bit, to intentionally tell him, put your phones up, you can have your phones out. We thought about taking the phones up, putting them in a box, but we didn't.
That's what I was going to say, is that for Mark and the other four guys that I went with, just to be honest, it was more of a spiritual experience for them than it was for me.
Yeah.
But when we got there, they said you either leave your phone in the truck or you turn it into the group leader and you don't have your phone all weekend, which I didn't realize how much I needed. It was a complete checkout. So we give an emergency number for spouses and send them an email before it starts. And we say, this weekend they're checking out. They're checking out from their wife. They're checking out from their kids. They're checking out from their job.
And this is ManUp?
Yes, ManUp.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but I still, in our recon, basically, I didn't realize I needed that. I mean, I tell everybody I had at least 200 emails when I got back from the weekend, but I needed to check out from you don't realize the responsibility you feel to those three things, and that everything revolves around those. And even if a man is weighed down by those things or is just tired, it's not manly to say that you're tired, and it's not manly to take a break, and it's not manly to step away. And so we all needed those things, and we may get further into it in a minute, but the biggest thing for me, and I thought I was the only one, is on a Saturday, and we do this at ManUp Adventure Camp, is we send guys into the woods for an hour with a journal, which I happen to have with me, and it has some guided questions in there, and we send them for silence and solitude for at least an hour into the woods, and then have everybody come back. And that was the biggest impact on me. And I thought it was just me. I was like, nobody else is getting anything out of this. And then I get back, and when guys were kind of randomly polled, and I listened to some podcasts after the fact, and they were like, that's the biggest impact of the whole weekend, is an hour of silence and solitude, that you're basically there, you're forced to do it. But men don't realize they need that time with God to just separate themselves. And a lot of guys, including myself, used to get that in a deer stand, or hunting was that for me. I don't hunt anymore for the most part, mainly fishing, but I used to like the silence and solitude. I didn't care whether I killed anything. I like to sit in the stand and watch the woods come to life, and it just, that part didn't matter to me, never did. But so last year when we had ManUp Adventure Camp, when it was all over, we started asking people, what was the biggest part of your weekend? And silence and solitude, silence and solitude. And it was amazing that to me that seems to overwhelmingly over and over again be the most impactful point.
Right. Yeah, we had that's across the board. Age wise, we had all the way from guys that were getting the senior discount at Hardee's, to
Talking about me?
To guys. Yeah, you. Well, I didn't know how to say that nicely. So guys that have made a lot of trips around the sun there, and then we actually had a group of guys that were I think the oldest in the group was 21. So it was 21 down to 18. My son's 18. He was actually part of that group. And so, when all this came up, so the way we organize ourselves is you're kind of divided into groups of 10. Each group has a captain, and normally the captain will recruit the guys for his group. You've always got guys that are signing up. We had a guy come from Nebraska, all over the place. I don't know, maybe Wisconsin or something, but I know we did have a guy come from
6 or 7 different states.
Yeah.
This first one.
Yeah. Which if you're if you grow up in the backwoods of Kentucky like I did, like Nebraska and Wisconsin, that's just might as well be on the other side of the world. But nonetheless, we had all these guys come in, and so it was over, all said and done. I was asking Garrett, my son, what his favorite time was. What did you like best? What would you change? And he said the solitude. He said, I would like to have at least another hour of solitude.
Yeah. So I was thinking a similar thing, and I can see that. And it's to me, just again, putting in my own mind, that's how I make sense of things, is we have just finished this Sunday a 21-day fast at church. And people do different things, but I did say I'm going to go X amount of time, and I'm going no food. And I'm not saying this to brag, but first day, all I could think about is I'm so hungry. Day 2, man, I'm starving. The days rolled by, and I finally at one point remembered, I know why I'm doing this. I remember why I'm doing this. I'm not so worried about the food, and I started to focus on my prayer life, on my enjoying the little things. So when you said that, I'm like, some guys don't get that hour. Some guys, that is that only hour of time when life is so busy and things are so, and that's, I have to take that effort every day. I try to consciously think, man, look at the sunrise. God made that. This is amazing. Or look at the sunset. Look at the color. I noticed the sun today. I'm like, that sun was so huge. And I'm like, God, that's amazing. And taking that time in that hour, so I could see why, especially with today, like you said, we are programmed to look at our phone or check an email, or as soon as we get in the truck, did we have any missed calls? Those kind of things, to just separate it and take that solitude. I can see where that's essential part of that. So how many years and how has the growth of ManUp happened or occurred?
Well, this was our first year. And we had between 85 and 90 guys there first year. Our goal this year is to have 300 to 500 guys.
Perfect.
And to keep growing. We've got 110 acres. The property backs up to the Shawnee National Forest. It's a beautiful property. And we want to fill it. The goal is to just fill the property.
Yeah, I know that it had mentioned when Mike was on here and talked about it. You guys share some of the testimonies out of last year's ManUp?
Can we?
Yeah. Like he mentioned like people getting baptized.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So we set up a baptistry, which was just a water trough, and it got pretty chilly during the night.
That's an understatement.
Well, it got cold.
For the water.
The water was cold. I don't know how cold the water was, but I know that guy that came out of it looked awful cold. And so, so we had that set up. Told him pretty early in the weekend that we were going to be doing that on Sunday morning. If you were there and you'd never followed the Lord in baptism, or you were there and he'd moved in your life and you're ready, you want to do that, we're going to have this time. And there was no heater. I think it had got down in the low 40s both nights. And so, it did not warm up much. So the water was cold. So we had three guys.
Yep. Three guys there. And then at least two or three more after the fact that I know of, that went back to their churches because they wanted family.
Yeah, they went back to their home churches. And then.
But it was amazing to see the impact in our first year. There were a lot of things I was looking for to make it a success. But we weren't even through the first night, and you've got 90 men on a hillside with their hands in the air praising God, and it was like, people were blown away. People that didn't know what to expect, people that didn't come there with any preconceived notion of what was going to happen. They're like, I'm going to camp out, cook some stuff on a campfire, and 3 hours later, there's tears streaming down their faces, and they're getting something they didn't expect.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in church and have been, involved in the Christian faith from the time I was born. And to say this was one of the most definitive movements of the Spirit would not be an understatement. We had Carrie Martin came out and spoke for us Saturday night, and he had not been there all weekend, but he had other prior engagements, but he wanted to came out as early as he could on Saturday. And I don't remember exactly what he said or how he said it, but his words were, the second I got out here, I could tell that this was holy ground. And I don't say that. We throw phrases around like that so much. Oh, this was a movement of the Spirit, or this is holy ground, or we just throw those phrases out so much, but it was a movement, just a movement of the Spirit from the time we got there. And there were a couple moments when we intentionally tried to not make it quote unquote churchy, just what I like to call uncensored, not vulgar, but uncensored, unsanitized Christianity. Like, let's get real. Let's deal with stuff that men deal with. And let's not play church. Let's just be real. And just to see guys respond to that, there's no way to describe it. You'll see this year when you come. Yeah, you'll see. He'll come back, tell you all about it. But
I'm excited.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking, we're at 297 now, because 3 of us right here, we're going to be there. So yeah, so we only need 297 listeners to come be part of it, because we already got 3 signed up.
There
tonight.
you go.
So I got a question. This is almost like
girls can't come.
That's like, no. I'm not gonna. No. My question would be, do you have the majority of the men there that are maybe unchurched? Do you think that they struggle with being a godly man, either for their wife or their children, because they could see that as maybe a weakness or like a lower, people's misinterpretations of?
Yeah, I think so. I think that men don't know how to do it. And part of it is, I think too, one of the things that Matt and I both are also part of, is leading, Cornerstone men at our church. And as we were putting Cornerstone men together, we read several books about it. And I remember reading in a book, I don't remember which one it was, what author said it, but he said that the danger is that men go to church and there's a really great women's ministry, and they think, let's have a great men's ministry, but all they know how to do is just do like where ladies would have a tea, maybe they have chili, but they don't know how to make it a men's ministry. They make it a women's ministry that
men go to.
Does chili that men go to. So I don't think a lot of men know how to lead their family, and plus it's awkward. I mean, you say you've been married for 15 years and you've never prayed with your wife. I remember those days of blessing the food before we ate.
Yeah.
But as far as praying together with my wife, that wasn't a part of what we did. We prayed, but sitting down, pouring out our hearts before the Lord. I remember how awkward that was when I started it. And that's a hard thing for men and women both to overcome. So I think a lot of men want to be a godly leader, and a lot of men want to lead their family. It's just so awkward. And then, they're afraid, well, what's my wife going to think? She's going to think I flipped my lid, what's going on? So, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think a lot of even Christian men just don't know how to do it.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where everybody was construction workers, coal miners, farmers, and almost none of them I knew were what I would call a Christian role model. If any of them were going to church at all. And then they would, if they did go, they were definitely too stubborn or I'm not walking up there. If there was, it didn't matter whether they went one time or they'd been there 15 years. There was an altar call. They were like, they're glued to their seat. They're not moving up front.
Right.
But guys, again, I think take it to another level as far as not wanting to be vulnerable, not wanting to see it. It's almost to them to go up on an altar call as weakness. If you're that gruff guy that's been on a construction site your whole life and you're not around somebody that's been a role model for you and you don't see that, you maybe marry a woman and then you end up going to church. And anyway, you don't like Mark was talking about earlier, we try not to make it too quote unquote churchy, but it's what we would call church speak. If you start throwing lingo from churches around, a lot of guys are just totally, it's like speaking another language and they don't understand what's going on. And ultimately that's not what it's about.
So give us about a 2-minute rundown of what a day, this starts Friday, goes Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. And what does a day look like? What does that Saturday look like in a 2-minute rundown? So
Saturday we got up, everybody's pretty much making breakfast over their campfires. We sounded an air horn and had everybody come up to a tent, and we had about an hour-long tent service. And then we sent everybody out to Silence of Solitude. We smoked a hog, had it smoking overnight, but we smoked a whole hog, and we all had lunch together, and then actually played some games together. We had some axe throwing.
Nice.
Actually shot some sling bows, if you've never shot a sling bow before. But had some other games set up and just had fun with each other. Went back to our camps for a while, and then we had another Saturday evening service, and then release everybody back to their campsites again. And like I said, we've got this little guide that kind of has a loose schedule on the back, and then questions for the leader of the camp to ask his group around the campfire to get conversation started.
And do you guys, I guess, just a plant, or is it all organic of how people get put together? Like, do you guys have 10 guys and those are going to be your 10 leaders for the 10 campsites? And that would be 10 groups. I guess, am I not asking the question right? Like, like Cornerstone has 10 guys, and these are our head chiefs at each campsite.
Well, so I kind of, the way I was inviting guys is to say, hey, if you've got a small group or you got a group of guys you hang out with from your church, bring them. Mm-hmm. But you can have your group. You can sign up. We prefer that it's 10 or less in the group. 10 is ideal. But like Mark was saying, we had guys sign up from out of state that didn't even know anybody. So we got to put them in a group. So we're looking for guys to lead groups. We're going to have an event in April. We haven't pinned down the date yet, where we're going to ask guys that are interested. We're going to ask all the guys that were there last year to come back. And then we're going to see if people try to recruit new group leaders, basically, or what we call adventure captains, that will be willing to try to recruit a group of 10 guys. Or some guys last year signed up to be adventure captains and said, I don't want to know anybody. What actually surprised me, they said put 9 random guys in my group. I'd rather not know anybody. So some guys liked it that way, but it doesn't matter. Well,
Do you have any special speakers lined up for this year, different from last year, or not yet? Or
not yet. And I think really, I mean, this, the speakers were good.
He was one of them.
I was one of them. But I mean, the speakers were good. They were throughout the 4 at least were very impactful. But the real impact comes sitting around the campfire. We've experienced this from participating in an event. We've experienced it from being instrumental in leading an event. I don't know how many times I heard the phrase, I have never told anyone this, but.
Yeah.
And then whatever burden they've been carrying, whatever they've been struggling with, just comes out.
I did it. I said that phrase.
I said that phrase. Yeah. We all said that phrase. Several times said that phrase. And what happens is when you, many of these guys, man, they've been struggling and they've been carrying these burdens for decades, and they've never had anybody to share this with. And so there's just been layer upon layer upon layer of internal guilt, internal shame, internal bondage from the enemy. And there's always been this very deep fear of what if I ever say this to someone, how are they going to respond? What are they going to say? What's going to happen? And what I tell guys, Matt's heard me say this, I don't know how many times at this point in our friendship together, to groups of guys, to individuals, is you need to realize that something very powerful just happened in your life, that Satan has had a stronghold, and he has had you convinced for decades that you can't share this, that you can't tell this. And you're still going to have to struggle with whatever it is you're struggling with. But that power he had over you is gone. That power is gone because you've just told a group of guys, and look how we responded. We've responded in grace and love and acceptance. And that power that he had over you, that part of it is gone. It's never coming back because you have broken that bondage. Now, let's deal with the other stuff. But the biggest holdback is gone. That's over. And you have listeners now that hearing what I just said struck a chord with, because they know the three things that they've never told anyone. And I guess what I would want to say to them is, man up wherever that may be. Find that place where you can share that and break that bondage. We've broke that bondage. Like, we know what that's like. We've experienced that freedom. And that is what keeps us doing Man Up.
I love it.
It's not the event. It's what we see.
Whether it's 85 guys or 2,700 guys, when that all happens over the course of a couple of days or 24 hours for that matter. I mean, both times I was in groups with some guys that I didn't know. And in every case, after one or two guys, for lack of a better term, spills their guts.
Yeah.
It just a chain reaction. Like the guy that's sitting across, I'm like, dude hadn't said a word all weekend. He's not about to open up. And next thing you know, there's tears rolling down his cheek, and he's telling us what he's dealt with his whole life. And I think it's almost like a brotherhood. So what happens a lot of times with these things is guys will come back year after year and be in the same camp. And then some guys will come back and they'll break off and have from the group they're in, and they'll bring a couple guys they're working on, a couple guys they think may need to be there with them. And then it blew me away. We had guys that were not believers. We had guys that were lukewarm, whatever you would want to say. But then when it came time for the baptisms, before Terry did the baptisms, he said, who here, you're looking out on the hillside, he said, who here felt like God spoke to him this weekend? And every single hand went up, not one single guy. And I mean, chills ran over me, and I'm just like, again, knew the weekend was more than worth it, everything we did, and knew that we just have to keep it going.
Yeah, Jonathan and my husband teach our small group class at church on Wednesdays, and I think that's the most, I hate to say rewarding, but I'm always amazed in the unlimitless power of what God can do. Or change hearts, change minds, change views in small group settings. It's just like watch that progression in someone's life and them just make their testimony. I think that's so impactful.
I sit here and there's no doubt, Mark, Matt, you guys are impacting people's lives through this podcast. You spoke it. I believe it. Through ManUp Adventure Camp, you guys, I believe it. I can feel the Holy Ghost just sitting here as we're talking about the power of exactly the vulnerability, the teaching men that I'm ornery. I play pranks, I play jokes, but I'm a godly, God-fearing man.
You guys should get along then.
Yeah, we'll be best friends.
Exactly, and have a good time. But then getting around like-minded men, like it's an experience that I'm looking forward to sharing with you gentlemen for sure. So tell us how we can find more about ManUp Adventure Camp.
So we have ManUp Adventure Camp website, and we also have, which we're actually remodeling within the next month, but also you can go through our Facebook page and there's a spot to register at either of those. Currently, the way it's set up, you would just go on and register. The new setup within the next week or so will have where you can register under somebody. So if you sign up and you got guys at your church that want to sign up under you, when they sign up, it'll say, do you want to sign up under a certain adventure captain? And you can they could select your name and sign up underneath you. If not, guys can always reach me through Matt J at manupadventurecamp.com. They can reach me and say if they want moved into a certain camp. If they've already signed up but didn't sign up under anybody and they want to be moved into one, I can take care of that.
Is there a registration fee or anything that we need up front?
There is, and it changes. Okay. Right now is the cheapest price, and I can't even tell you right off the top of my head what it's at right now. But as it gets closer to camp time, it'll go up, and then there'll be a cutoff. But Mark can give you a little bit of a heads up because he is basically over the adventure captains. Everybody that signs up to be a captain, Mark will have, I think, one or two, maybe more.
Yeah.
Basically, online chats with them, tell them what to expect and what to do with their groups once they get there, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so definitely if you have never been an adventure captain before, which unless you were one this year, you haven't, because it's the first year we've ever done it. But if you've never done that and that seems overwhelming, a couple of things that we've done, so once you sign to be an adventure captain, you're given access to probably about 10 to 15 short, minute and a half, just video clips of me walking you through the process. Here's what it looks like to be an adventure captain. Here's what it looks like. Here's how to find guys to be part of your group. Here's what to expect that weekend. Here's what to bring, what not to bring. Every piece of information you need to know. So one of the things that I do not want is adventure captains for sure, because you're leading your campsite. You're organizing the weekend with your guys. I don't want you coming in blind. The last thing we would want is for you to get there to not have something you need, your campsite not have something you need, it turned into a frustrating weekend when it wouldn't have to be. So you get all the information that you're going to need up front, and then throughout the process of leading up to camp, we will do Zoom calls. Our hopes this year is we're having adventure captains coming from other states, rather than just from, the Southern Illinois region. I hope we can't have everybody together, because I hope we got guys coming from so far off that they can't drive in for an hour. But we will get guys together. We'll get you prepared so you know exactly what to expect, or enough of what to expect that you're not going to be ill prepared when you arrive.
So is the date set on this event?
October 25th through 27th this year. I would ask you a question. What do you guys think it would be the biggest hang up of getting guys to come out for the weekend? Because we know what it is.
I know October's football season. That's always a tough one. I don't know a
deer
local
hunting,
schedule,
bow hunting,
but a lot of Friday nights are going through high school football players. I know, again, to a father, that's important to be there. That's something. My kids don't play football, but I'm just throwing things out. Something in the October schedule I could see is a Friday night football game could put a.
What were you thinking?
Well, our biggest obstacle, there's no doubt, our biggest obstacle was getting guys to camp out in a tent.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow.
And that's what I tell people.
Expect.
It's semi-private, semi-private too, but semi-primitive, which means you get a tent, but we have porta potties. So believe it or not,
He would never give you that answer because
No.
he would just sleep
My
in the
brain
back of a
doesn't
truck
go like that.
yeah, he would
yeah.
whatever.
Well, again, that was coming from my background. I talked to a lot of guys and they're like, well, I don't want to sleep outside. I'm like, well, you're not outside, you're in a tent. I don't want to sleep on the ground. Well, you're not on the ground, you got a pad.
It was amazing. Like, we had,
Wow.
there's probably 30 or 40 guys that backed out because of this reason. Like, literally, we're talking about we're going to add it to the website where if you're coming in and you don't have the gear, for an extra fee, we'll have a tent, we'll have a sleeping bag, we'll have
have
either,
some spots
a lot of
already
them don't
set
have
up.
the gear, and then a lot of them are literally afraid. We had a couple groups that had 10 guys in it, and 7 back out because they were afraid to sleep on the ground. And I was like, what are we talking about?
So you're teaching them to literally man up.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice play on words, but
Yes.
Yeah, and again, and I think too, recognize if you're one of those guys and you're listening to this, like, we're not going to make fun of you.
no.
I give you a crash
not,
course.
not after
I can
Friday
even,
night anyway.
Yeah, not after. Yeah, no, we're not going to make fun of you. If you've never camped out before. I've had a couple guys kind of give me a little pushback on the whole camping out thing, and I said, "Here's the thing, man. You love the Lord. You want to see Him move. You want to see guys impacted. Just think about camping as the one sacrifice you have to make to see all those things happen." It still didn't really work, but I felt good about what I said. So.
One of the buddies that went with us he'd never camped out before, and he brought a 4-man tent. When it was over, he went to the dumpster. He's like, I can't even get this thing back in the bag. I don't want to deal with it. It was so comical. He was so mad.
Whoa.
And the same thing this year. Like, one of the guys just wadded up his tent and threw it in the dumpster. It was over, and he's like, I'll
This
be
is the only
back next
time
year,
I've
but I'll
used
just
it.
buy another tent.
And you'll get that. I mean, I can see that, but to say that was the number one reason, I was going like, what in the schedule would keep me from coming?
That and deer season.
Yeah.
Those were the two things.
Which is why we did move it away from shotgun season as much as we could.
Right.
But yeah, that was our biggest reason. I mean, yeah, I can't. It would just blow my mind. These adventure captains were calling me, and they're like, 5 guys just backed out because they said they've never slept on the ground.
Well, come on, men, get a hold of it. We're looking for a move of God. We got to sometimes sacrifice what we're afraid of to. I'd say when he was feeding the 5,000, they were following him. They weren't worried, and he was performing miracles. But we have faith that same thing can go on there. So get your tent. Go buy one. Come on out for sure.
Exactly.
Well, guys, you guys got any other plugs? Any Instagram, social media aspects, anything?
Not really. I mean, we're on all those things, but Shane.
Our social media guy, I'll still call him our IT guy. He doesn't think it's funny as I do, but apparently there's a big difference in a social media and an IT guy. I don't know.
Right
Yes.
on. So check out Integrity Roofing and also the ManUp Adventure Camp.
Yep. We also, I call it the Integrity family of businesses. So we have Integrity that does mainly all the roofing. Home Renew does remodels, decks, and then Legacy Farm, like I said, is an event center, but a wedding venue. And then we've got some leadership things coming up, like a Ripple Effect is coming up 3 weekends from now, which Carrie Martin will be speaking at. Terry will be there, and then we've got some other guests, and that is online too, if anybody wants to look that up and sign up.
Yeah, thank you for letting me sit in on the Man podcast. Appreciate you guys' time, and it's really encouraging to see what God's going to do through you guys. And
This is Jonathan, Team AWOL out.